In this second crash course design project, we're going to recreate this design and we're going to learn some new organizational tips. Let's move back over to this project we've been working on, and our layers are starting to get a bit much and we want to organize these. So the first thing we can do is put them in a group. So I'm going to select them all and turn them into a group. The second thing I want to do is use artboards. Artboards is a technique taken from Adobe Illustrator that I love now in Photoshop because it's a way to create multiple designs right within one Photoshop project. Let me show you how it works. To create an artboard that's the same size as your existing canvas, click to add a new layer. This is a blank layer that's the size of this canvas. Right-click and choose New Artboard with that selected. You can rename it. We'll see why that's important later, but for now, we can see that it's the same height and width and just click OK. So now we have this artboard, which is almost like a group in itself, but there's a key difference. We can actually delete this layer now because we still have this artboard. Notice that we have this plus and minus on the right and left hand side. We also have under here, we have this move tool. We now have the artboard tool that we can get to. Why are these plus and minus buttons here? Because if we click plus on the side, we now have this second artboard that we can design in. So it's up to you if you want to have it to the right, up, down, whatever. You can even move these around. So if I go back to my artboard tool, I can actually just click that artboard title and move it around if we need more space, for example. And remember how I was moving around my canvas. If I press the space bar, I get the hand move tool. That's also down here in your toolbar, and I can just move around here. You can also, with the artboard tool, create an artboard of a different size, and you can see highlighted above my cursor the width and height. So if there is a different aspect ratio of a design you want to create, for example, maybe one's a social media post, one's an email header, one's for a website, you can do that all in this one area, and we can see it all. I'm going to delete that one. And now we can start designing our second design. Now I can start importing assets into this second artboard for our second project. So I'm going to take this Meditating 2 image and I'm going to drop it in here. And as soon as I sort of place it onto this artboard area, it moves it within that artboard here in the layer panel as well. So let's back up over here and see what we're going to be designing. We have this text on the right and the bottom. We have this background color. We have a couple of these shapes over here that look like they were custom created with the pen tool. And then we have this image here, which we'll learn a couple ways to crop photos, and one using a frame, which makes it super quick to swap photos within a frame in Photoshop. Here's a quick little tip. If you press Z on your keyboard and bring up the zoom tool, you can actually just click and drag right or left and it zooms in or out, and you can kind of adjust it exactly where you want your canvas. The first thing I want to do is add a colored background. To do that, I can click on this button here and choose solid color, and then choose the color that I want. I can change this later, but for now I'm just going to create this sort of brownish creamy color, and I'm going to put this behind our image. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my meditating layer, and I'm actually going to use the curvature pen tool to create some shapes. So by clicking around, I can now create this shape, and I can still press the space bar and move this canvas around, and when I let go of the space bar, I still have my curvature pen tool, which allows me to see better what I'm creating. I'm creating this shape outside of the canvas, outside of the artboard, which allows me to better create the curve and the shape that I want. And if I want to move it within the frame, I can. So something like that. Let's change the color of this. To change the color, I have to go back to the pen tool and then change the fill color. Let's just pick one of these like pastel colors, maybe like this purplish color. And then let's go ahead and create another one for the bottom. So back here with the curvature pen tool. So I've completed that shape, but say I don't like exactly how it looks, I can go in, I can move this around. Maybe I can add another point over here so this curve is a little bit more subtle. Something like that. And same thing, I'm going to change the color, and I'm going to use, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty nice. And now let's turn our image back on. We're going to put this shape layer underneath. So how do we crop this photo so that it fits on the side as a rectangle? One of the ways is to use a layer mask. So if I have that selected, click the layer mask button, and then I go in with my rectangle marquee tool and I hover over that side. I have to switch this to white and then press the backspace, and that's deleting that white area. And then I can go over here and do the same thing, delete, and then go back to my move tool, and then I can move this layer around. Now, if you ever have a marquee or a selection and you just want to get out of it, just select this marquee tool, click outside of that, and now we don't have that selection. And I can move this around, but notice that we still have these edges of the photo that I didn't delete. And I can go in and delete these, and that's one way to do this, but I'm going to show you an even better way. So let me undo this. All right, a better way to do this is with a frame. This is another newish tool. With this photo selected, and now with this frame tool selected, you have a circular and a rectangular tool. With the rectangle or square, I can now click and drag over this image. Now, it doesn't have to match exactly, but just create a rectangle about the size that you want, something like this. And now we have this frame that this image is within. Now, notice that this image is not centered anymore. The image does not go to the bottom of the frame, and the frame itself is not properly placed. So what I'm going to do is go back to my move tool, and now I have the image selected within this frame. So see how on the layer panel, we now have this frame on the left with the image. So now I can select the image itself and resize and reposition the image here. And now I can click over here to the frame and click on the edge of the frame, and I can go ahead and move this frame. It looks like my image is still not meeting the bottom of the frame. Something like that. Back to my frame again. And that looks pretty good. Now let me show you how easy it is to change the content of this frame. If I have this frame selected and then I go to my Finder, for example, and I drag this image into this frame now, it just pops in there. I can resize it, move it around. Another way you can do this is if you have this frame selected, you can go up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded, and then find the file from your computer and choose Place, and it's going to place that in there as well. If we want to edit the size of the frame after the fact, just select the frame, select the edge, and you can move it in or out. And then we could recenter our image by double-clicking into our photo or selecting the photo part of this layer in our layer panel and moving it around. Now, another really cool thing you can do is, let me turn this off. If I take my curvature pen tool and you want to create some sort of custom blobby frame or any sort of custom shape that you want, you can create your shape and then right-click, then choose Convert to Frame. Okay, and now we have this frame and we have to place an image. So we can do that by dragging it in from the Finder, for example, and just dragging it into this newly created frame. Whoops, I started creating another shape. Let me delete that, go back to my move tool, and now we can move this frame around. We can double click into it, move our little meditating friend here around, and we have this really cool circular blob shape frame. I actually kind of like that, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to take a couple of these shapes over here and just move them in though, just make it look a little bit better like that. All right, so one of the things that we have here though is this drop shadow behind this image. Now, you can't add a drop shadow behind this frame. For whatever reason, if you double click this layer, add a drop shadow, it doesn't appear. One of the ways you can get around this is I'm going to actually duplicate this layer. I'm going to right click and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now, the issue with this is that we can't adjust the frame anymore and the positioning of the person. But I actually don't care about that because all I want to do is double click this layer and use it to create a drop shadow. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of a drop shadow over to the side. You can play around with your settings as fit. Click OK. Now, if I turn on my meditating frame layer and put this above our drop shadow layer, you have this drop shadow. Lastly, we're going to add our text. So I'm going to take my text tool, click in and type in meditation class. For this one, I changed the font to Baskerville regular, and then I picked a sort of brown color. Let's just pick a color from his shirt and maybe make it a little bit lighter. I like referencing colors within images to make the colors within our designs. And then I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I can hover over the edge of this, hold the shift key down, and that helps jump the rotations by 15 degrees, and then go to 90, and I can resize. Forgot exactly how I did it. So it was on 2 lines. So I didn't lock that in place. So again, let's hover over, rotate, holding 90 degrees, position this, and then press the return key to lock that text in place. Go into my type tool so that I can go into this text. Now I want to adjust the paragraph settings so that it's aligned to the top or to the left side of this text box. So I'm going to take it, actually for both of these, I'm going to left align, and now take my move tool and I can reposition these. And I think there's a space right here in this text, right there. And it might have been easier to create the other text first, but I can still option drag this, rotate it back, move it here, and then we had our little class information. I might have used a more bold font. And see how I can use those pink highlights to align this text so that it's aligned with this text right here. And maybe for this one, I do actually want to justify it. And I'm actually going to go in here and make it Baskerville. I'm going to choose the semi-bold option. So now we have our design. We still have our frame that we could adjust. We have that drop shadow that we created with this second layer. We have our text that we added, these other shapes. We also learned how to use artboards. We're going to continue to use the artboards for the last design. And after that, you'll see why it's really cool to use artboards when exporting, because you can actually save all of these designs in one go. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. You learned a couple new things, and then in the next one, we're going to be learning how to make this last design right here.